Hello everyone, Big Clingy here, and we're sort of approaching the end of the Alpha Sapphire series. There isn't really all that much stuff I have left to go. I've just completed the Delta episode, so really just a few more post-game stuff, and then for the most part, that project's about time to finish. So basically time to move on to the next one, and I already have plans for the next project. However, I hit a bit of a snag. Now, the next game I want to record is definitely one where I need to show both screens of the 3DS at the same time. Now, Pokemon Alpha Sapphire, I actually liked the way that I recorded that footage, mostly just showing the top screen and only cutting to the bottom screen occasionally. That method I actually think works quite well for Pokemon because most of the action is on the top screen anyway, and only menus and stuff like that is on the bottom screen, so you really only need to see the bottom screen when you actually go into menus and the like. This game, the thing is, in this game, if you're only showing the top screen, which is where most of the action is, you actually miss a lot of very crucial information because basically, in Fire Emblem Awakening, character stats and equipment is all displayed on the bottom screen. Not only that, but level up stat gains are also displayed on the bottom screen. Basically, there's a lot of information on the bottom screen, and it's pretty much happening concurrent to the main action. Not just that, but basically actual battles as well. Basically all of the combat stats are on the bottom screen, including the health bars of both combatants. So if you can't see the bottom screen, it's actually really hard to know what's going on. Also things like the hit percentage, critical percentage, damage dealt, all of that is on the bottom screen. So actually, let me just give you an example right here. See what I mean? It would be very hard to follow what was actually happening there if you couldn't see the bottom screen. And the problem with that approach is that video right there, okay? That's what my video files look like when I record both screens as one file. They look like that, and while that is okay, it really doesn't lend very well to viewing because the top screen ends up being very small, so it's actually hard to see a lot of the action. So, basically there are a lot of YouTubers who come up with special layouts for 3DS screens, and I thought that I would pretty much have to do this for this game, because otherwise, yes, it would be very hard to. Basically, I don't want to do what I did with my X and Y run. I really don't like the way that looks. It just looks far too small and stuff, so I'm not going to do that. But the problem was, a lot of these people, they use very specific types of video editing software that are either extremely expensive or involve monthly fees or things like that, and I really don't want to shill out for something like that when I already have well, I mean, it's not that great of a recording program. I mean, it crashes all the time, but it is the best I've got, and I like the way I know how to use it, basically. The only problem with my current editing software is that its crop function is absolutely terrible. I tried looking all over the internet for tutorials on how to crop videos the proper way, that is to actually crop them, and it turns out that the video editing program that I use just simply can't do that. It just defaults to zooming in on a certain section of the video, and you can't change the size of the window that you zoom in on. It just doesn't really work for my purposes, or for the way that a lot of these other people do it. So how they usually go about doing this is, they record both screens as one video file, then they put 2 copies of the clip on the timeline, and on one of them they crop it so that only the top screen is shown, on another they only crop it so the bottom screen is shown, and they move these around the screen until they're in the right positions. Well, there I have another problem, because my recording software does not allow me to reposition video on the screen either, unless it's in the picture-in-picture track. And the problem with that is, unless I upgrade to the, apparently, I only get one picture-in-picture track. Yeah, for some reason, on a piece of software that came with a capture card that, not my 3DS capture card, my TV capture card, that came with a capture card that cost me $200, it still has some of its features locked out unless I pay more. That is incredibly annoying. But basically, yeah, a lot of the tricks they use cannot be done on my recording software. Or can they? I played around with the settings, I was able to improvise what I think is actually a pretty decent solution. And I'm going to explain briefly how I did this. So, what I would do is, I would basically take, you've already seen what the raw video footage looks like, okay? So I don't need to show that anymore. I basically take that, okay? Now, in my video, I would put as the main track, I would put just a still background image. The image that I plan on using for the actual background. So, an image like this. Then what I do is, I then put the original video in the picture-in-picture track. Now what I do is, I move this video to the bottom corner of the screen. Now, my recording software won't actually let me crop this picture-in-picture video, but I can do something similar with a tool called Mask. So here, I apply a mask to this video file. A mask that, conveniently, makes the top screen invisible. So it's still technically there, I'm just only showing the bottom screen. And while I'm at it, I may as well mask out the black bars on the sides of the bottom screen as well. There we go, that looks better. So now what I have to do here is, I have to actually save this file right here, this file with just the background picture and the bottom screen, as its own video file, in exactly the same way that I normally save a video. This results in a video that looks something like this. Now, with that saved as its own video file, I then start a new project, and I have that as the main video track. Then, on top of this, I import the original file again as a picture-in-picture. This time, though, I do the same thing, but with the top screen. I move it up into the top corner of the screen, resize it appropriately, and mask out the bottom screen. So I get something looking like this, with the bottom screen footage still playing. And then, I then produce this video file. And in the end, I get something that looks like this. And there you go, 2 screens, 1 video in the proper layout. Yeah, it is a bit of a hack job, but I had to work with what I had, and I'm kind of surprised I was able to actually improvise a solution like that. I actually have the full test video on YouTube as an unlisted video. I'll put a link in the description, so go ahead and watch that. I warn you, there is a bit of a weird thing with the sound. Basically, I forgot to turn off record from microphone on Fraps, and I think it seems to have picked up something coming off of the TV. It's probably just a tennis game, so just don't pay much attention to it. But anyway, I personally think it looks alright. I mean, again, the actual positioning of the screens is not perfect just yet. Just tell me how it looks like, you know, how big or small the bottom screen should be, you know, whether one screen's too big or too small, whether there's too much, you know, blank area. Also, the image behind is still just a test. I might put something there eventually, just, I don't want it to be too distracting from the main video, that's all. So, yeah, just go ahead and look at that video if you want to see the full thing, but that's basically my just sort of hack job solution to this whole thing, and I think it's kind of okay. So, with that, that's one just test of Fire Emblem Awakening stuff out of the way. There's one more thing that I want to test, and that is my template for stat sheets. And I've already started to work on just a little bit in a PowerPoint presentation like I did the other ones for New Mystery of the Emblem, but I wanted to show them off here just to make sure that all the numbers are fully visible and everything is alright with the layout before I worked on any more, because basically I want to take into account any feedback I get here and actually use that to work on all the rest of the slides. So, here is my sample stat sheet that I prepared earlier. So, here we have Sumia's growth rates, base stats, and cap modifiers. So I put the image to the left side of the screen because I think it looks more natural there, the character portrait. And from there, I've basically got the growth rate's right in the middle. I was able to find an interesting setting for automatically generating charts that actually works quite well for making growth rates. I didn't use this last time, I actually put together my own graphics, but this I actually think is not that bad, really. Again, the text color, I could change that. The chart colors, too, I could change those. This is just a sample. The font size, I hope the font is big enough. I could bold the text as well, just so you can see it better. But basically there, I have the growth rates for all of the major stats there. And you can see the numbers at the bottom are basically what the different increments represent. And also, the blue part of the growth rates, and this is new to this game. If you don't know much about how Awakening's mechanics work, it's kind of going to be hard to explain here, but basically the blue part of the growth rates are the character's base growths, and the orange part is the part of the growths that are added by their class. And technically speaking, this system was true for New Mystery of the Emblem, but because I played that game with no reclassing in mind, I never took into account reclassing. In Awakening, reclassing is much more important, so I want to take that into account. I'm definitely not going to show every single character's growth rates for all of their class options, because that would be ridiculous. But I'll show their growth rates for their starting class, but again, I have the growths that are added by their class. They're in orange. The blue are the character's base growths, and they will always be there regardless of what class they're in. The class growths just get added on top of that. So, that, I guess, hopefully that makes sense. The only issue here that I'm having here is that HP being on the same scale as the other stats isn't exactly appropriate. Now, in my stat sheets for New Mystery of the Emblem, I actually made my own separate scale for HP because HP has different standards to other growths. Basically, the HP growth is usually going to be much higher than the other growths just by the very nature of the stat. And having it use the same scale really makes some characters' HP look better than it actually is, and also it kind of affects the way their other stats look too. I mean, I'm actually still kind of fine with this system. Like, you can tell from this that Sumia's best stats are skill, speed, and luck, right? That those are her main stats. Hopefully you can tell that. The problem is HP. From this, you wouldn't be able to tell that Sumia's HP is actually quite bad. 75% is not that great by HP growth standards. 80 is around the average, and some characters have up to 100 or even 130. So that's the real problem that I'm having here, and it would be quite hard to put HP on its own scale. But then again, I guess you can kind of tell that HP isn't really a strong suit when there's the vast majority of her HP growth is actually added by her class. I'm just a little worried about those characters like the fighter and warrior classes, or mercenaries and heroes, that will end up with massive HP growths, and they'll just really dwarf all their other stats and make their other stats look really small when they actually aren't. But I don't know, that's just the thing. Also, modifiers. I hope you like the colors and the font that I use for the cap modifiers. I hope they're relatively easy to see, like they're aligned properly with the right stats. So as you can see here, there are never modifiers to the HP cap, so basically they start with strength, then magic, skill, speed, luck, defense and resistance. And as you can see there, Sumia has -2 to strength and defense, but +2 to skill and +3 to speed and +1 resistance. I'll explain what cap modifiers are when we actually get into the Awakening playthrough, because that's actually a new feature for that game. Below that, we have the base stats. That is the stats the character actually has when they join. And below that, and here is the one thing where I'm actually thinking, maybe this isn't such a good idea. Now, for New Mystery of the Emblem, I did average stats at level 20 promoted. And for the most part, that was usually pretty helpful. The thing is, it's not that accurate in Awakening. Basically, but with the way that Awakening's system actually works, you can't really do average stats at level 20 promoted. It doesn't really work that way because actually doing these averages, one, I had to calculate these myself, and two, they only make sense if you keep the character in their same class throughout all levels of their entire progression and never reclass them at all. And this is something that you don't really do in Awakening, because reclassing, again, is a big part of its gameplay, and so if you reclass a character even once, these averages become pointless. They no longer apply. So I really think that it would be safe just to cut off the average level 2020 stats, because I really don't think they make sense in Awakening's context. But that's basically everything on the first page of the stat sheets. Yep, you heard me right, there's another page, and I'm going to put that up right now. Now on this page, I'll show the character's class options. This is every class they can access via reclassing and promotions, and accompanied by pictures. Yeah, I got these pictures off of the Fire Emblem wiki. They just happen to have actually detailed pictures of what every character looks like in all of their reclass options, so that's actually very cool. Some of them don't have pictures, so I might actually have to take a few screenshots myself just to get them, but suffice to say, I should be able to get them just fine. Below the pictures, I have the skills the character learns in those classes. So, this here is a guide to basically all the reclass options of the character in question, but also every skill they can possibly access. And skills are a really big part of Awakening. Note here that I don't actually list the levels the classes learn each skill, and that's because they're actually the same for every class, pretty much. Unpromoted classes always learn their first skill at level 1 and their second at level 10, and promoted classes learn their first skill at level 5 and their second at level 15. So, once you know that, you don't need to have any levels listed for this at all. So, basically, I'll explain that for a few times to get that out of the way, and then really I don't need to actually mention that again, because it is the same for every single class. Except for, like, Manakete and Targwell and Villager. I'll explain those separately. But, basically, yeah. Yeah, be warned. This whole class thing and skill thing, I'm actually only going to show this for first-generation characters, because second-generation characters, there is way too much variance in the potential classes and skills they have access to. So, yeah, I'm also not going to show growth rates, and I'm actually not going to show much details for second-generation characters at all, because they vary wildly based on their parents, so yeah, there's no real point in covering all of that, because that would just be too insane. But, yes, I am going to show them for first-gen characters, and, yeah, really, I think this is pretty self-explanatory. So, as you can see here, Sumia's class options are Pegasus Knight, which promotes to either Falcon Knight or Dark Flyer, Knight, which promotes to either General or Great Knight, and Cleric, which promotes to either Sage or War Cleric. So, I'll explain that for each character, I'll mention the useful skills they learn and things like that. As for explaining skills themselves, I actually, in order to save time on the stat sheets, what I'm actually thinking of doing is, I'm thinking of eventually putting together a big skills tutorial video series where I explain in detail the effects of every single skill in the game. And I basically just say, okay, refer back to this video if you want to know how these skills work. That, I think, is the best way to do this. It would take me a very long time to find footage of all those skills, though, so that might be a project that may take a while, and might be a side project to the actual main playthrough. But I do plan on getting a full skills guide done eventually. Again, as part of the project, I will also be doing inheritance guides and anything else that I would need to cover. How the avatar stats are determined. I'll do separate guides on those kind of things as well. But also, one more thing regarding these stat sheets. As you can tell, there is a lot to talk about for every individual character in Awakening. Now, fortunately, Awakening doesn't have nearly as many characters as most Fire Emblem games do. But still, because there is so much that I need to talk about for each character, it would really bog down videos if I was actually doing this stat sheet explanation in the video itself. Because, yeah, that would result in, it would really bog things down. So, instead, what I'm planning on doing is, I'm actually going to make the character stat sheets and my discussion of the characters, I'm actually going to upload them as separate unlisted videos that I will link to in the main playthrough. That way, I think that way is kind of a good compromise. So, yeah, that's basically what I'm going to do. So, every character's stat sheets and discussion, I will do in an unlisted video that I will link to from the main video. That way, if you want to see me explain in a lot of detail, and I mean a lot of detail, I mean, I could talk a lot about these characters, the characters and what their good points and bad points are, their class options, any recommended skills for them, you can go to the unlisted video, but if you just want to see the gameplay, then you can just safely ignore it and keep watching. That way you don't have to get, and that way my videos don't end up being like 50 minutes long for one chapter, because I spend 20 minutes out of that just talking about characters. So, that's pretty much all I wanted to explain. So with that, I'll be getting back to Alpha Sapphire relatively soon, and then it'll be on to this, so hopefully this turns out well. So, I guess I'll see you next time. And just feel free to leave any feedback in the comments section. So yeah, much appreciated. This is the reason why I'm sharing this now. Feedback on these stat sheets and my video layouts is appreciated. Again, that's the reason why I'm sharing it. So give feedback so I can improve it for when I actually get to the playthrough. So yeah, be sure to comment, and I'll see you soon.